is the last picture show with Rahim Khan, and we are commiserating or celebrating the departure of Kathleen Kennedy from Lucasfilms. The news came, I believe, last week, and I was raring to comment on it. Of course, other things got in the way. But I think this is a point for many a fanboy, myself included, to rejoice. However, this comes with a certain amount of trepidation as her replacements, her successors, though I would say worthy in their own right, still give one pause. And I'll get to that in a second, because I'm sure a lot of you, sort of like myself, are almost, I'm not going to say indebted, but I think that we trust Dave Filoni. Of course, okay. So Kathleen Kennedy, of course, she's had a storied career in Hollywood itself, a part of Hollywood royalty. And while she's worked on many a franchise film, Indiana Jones, blah, 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 she took the reins of Lucasfilms after, of course, George Lucas, departed, sold off his shares, and she's been helming it, steering it for the past 14 years now. But of course, it has been a mixed bag. Let's of course address the very the third trilogy, the sequels, if you will. So the thing is that, of course, we all had the originals, right? Then, of course, Lucas went and did the prequels, which at the time were much reviled, and perhaps maybe even wholly unnecessary at the time. But as, of course, time has gone by, we are now sort of 20 years on from the completion of those movies. I think that while there were, of course, low points, The Phantom Menace, there were high points, Revenge of the Sith. And regardless of what those of you at home may say watching this, I think that, again, barring The Phantom Menace, barring even maybe the Clone Wars, except for, of course, its finale, the Revenge of the Sith, for me, was a fine movie. I think it was, sure, not as good as, of course, the original, but I still think that it was good. I liked it. Please disagree with me in the comments, but it was definitely something that I can find myself watching even now, right? Forget, of course, all the memes. I have the high ground, hello there, all of those. Forget all of those. It's still a film that I would prefer watching over, pardon my French, any of the shit that J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy put together with the new trilogy, with the sequel. Okay. Let's be honest. Sure. For those of you like myself who are fans, and we sort of read all of the Dark Horse comics, and we saw how the Skywalker saga continued. I don't think we needed the sequels. I don't think that we needed, especially not like these. I don't think that we fans, like, for example, I'll be perfectly honest here. If I wanted to see more from the Star Wars canon, from the Star Wars universe, I wanted to see something that did not include or involve the Skywalkers. Because I think, sort of 6 movies dealing with that family saga was more than enough. And the thing is again, for fans who are not yet sated, you could just as well turn to the comics. And the thing is that continuing story was good enough, right? I wanted them to explore more from the Star Wars universe. Like, for example, the Old Republic, or go even further back, all of these things. They didn't do that. They thought that, for example, again, when it did come out in 2016, those of us who were around for, well, of course, I wasn't around for the originals, but who grew up at least watching them much later on. And then, of course, for the prequels, we'd be old enough now to, sort of get there in the cinema and sort of, spend all of that money and sort of make this new trilogy a hit. Of course we did. Of course we were all there, sort of like, sort of lining up to get tickets, clamoring to, sort of be the first to watch it. And how were we rewarded? With, I don't even know how to explain that movie, because the thing is that while, The Force Awakens was essentially a New Hope retread, it was a pale imitation. I mean, it was something that couldn't come close. I mean, J.J. Abrams, Cloverfield, yes, Lost, up till maybe the third season, Mission Impossible 3, yeah. He's had like a checkered career. I mean, the thing is that, yes, he's sort of like, sort of been there and done that. But the thing is that sort of, if you look at his body of work, it's hits and misses, right? And the thing is that A Force Awakens was 100% a miss. It made me regret the fact that I was there in the cinema. And the thing is, I didn't want that to happen with my first cinematic experience of a Star Wars movie. Because I remember watching the prequels, we didn't have cinemas here at the time, so watching them at home. Same goes for the original. It was not a cinematic experience for me, a theatrical release, but we got to see that. And sort of, I remember when it did, sort of when the music started playing and you had the opening crawl, I was like, God damn, this is it. But it wasn't. I think the only highlight of that first movie was when Kylo Ren sort of like, force stops the blaster beam laser, whatever you want to call it. But that was it for me. And unfortunately, that was it for me for the entire trilogy. Because, yes, they then bring in Rian Johnson to do... God, what was the second one called? It'll pop up here. They bring him in to do that. And again, he swings and, a couple of times the punch lands, and I mean, there were some knockout scenes in the movie, but then there were also a bunch of misses. Like, for example, Snoke, he gets sort of decapitated. Who the hell is Snoke? Who is this guy? We thought he was the big bad, right? Luke turns into this murderous uncle figure who does have a really cool sort of exit stage left. But whatever. There was that really cool, hyperspace moment where that lady crashes into thing, which is something we wonder why was never used before. There were some cool moments in that movie. I appreciate the fact that Rian Johnson tried. He tried. Did he fail? I'm not sure. But again, it left fans divided. Then, of course, we had the third, where again, we come back to J.J. Abrams, and he gives us yet another, Return of the Jedi retread, right? So, suffice it to say, the trilogy was something that I think many a fan wishes to forget. In fact, they may not even want to include sort of in the Star Wars, I wouldn't want to include it. Those are not movies that I wish to ever watch again, But the thing is that I'm partial to the prequels. Then, of course, they venture into TV. We get that with The Mandalorian. Now, again, The Mandalorian, thanks to Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, under the aegis of Kathleen Kennedy, we get a series that of course is gangbusters initially, because let's be honest, by the third season, I think even that initial public interest had kind of waned. People had gotten over how cute Baby Yoda / Grogu was, and I think the novelty wore off. And even as a show, yes, it was delving into something that I really like, Mandalorian culture and all of that stuff. that was something that sort of, again, reading from the comics, like, for example, the Jedi Mandalorian War and all of those things was something that we wanted. We got a taste of it in Clone Wars. So it was good. I like that. But I mean, some of the episodes, it wasn't great all the time. In fact, it wasn't even good all the time. What else did we get? It was The Mandalorian. Boba Fett was just a pilot. It was shit. I mean, I remember there was this meme, and I hope I can find it, but it was a picture of this kid in a sandbox with all of these, like, sort of Star Wars toys, and he's just, like, sort of mashing, hitting them together and all of that stuff. And I think they were saying, oh, this is, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni on Boba Fett. Because the thing is that, do you remember the finale where there was just, like, sort of this old Western sort of shootout, and then they had, like, rancors, and they had this and that. It was just, like, wild. Not the Boba Fett series that I wanted, really. And then, of course, there is the stain, at least on her reputation, something that she did address in her Deadline interview. Was it Dateline interview? Deadline. Let me see. Deadline. A Deadline interview, in which she addresses, of course, Solo, the Han Solo star prequel movie, which really, I mean, now, of course, she, hindsight is 2020. She says that, she wish that they hadn't done it so soon, which is, I think, a regret that Disney as well as Marvel have, in that sort of, in order to capitalize on the success of these initial movies. Because the thing is that regardless of what you and I may say, what critics may say, the movies, the new trilogy did go on to make, like, sort of $1 billion each. They made a buttload of money. So, of course, they were like, sort of strike while the iron is hot. Let us sort of keep on churning out stuff. And that churn out model just never works. Because the thing is that it's, again, quality over quantity, as cliche as it may sound, but it ends up just being a quantity thing, because they can never seem to, maintain that quality. The only notable thing, well, there are two notable things in sort of Kathleen Kennedy's leadership at thing. One, of course, is Rogue One and Andor, and the second thing is, of course, the the animated shows, and particularly like Star Wars Visions and Star Wars Tales of the Empire, Tales of the Sith, Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Underworld. So the thing is that, and of course, the Bad Batch, Rebels, not so much that other one. What was that one? The one about those pilots. Forgetting that one. But sort of animation was always strong. And the thing is that that's, of course, thanks to Dave Filoni, who has, because of working, I mean, sort of, if anyone were, I think, I'll get to that in a second, but I mean, sort of, anyone was an heir apparent to Lucas, it was Filoni. And the thing is that all of his animation stuff has paid off, right? Maybe not so Ahsoka, but we'll get into that in a second. So for these, of course, I will give her credit, but then I'm also going to give her credit for bringing on Tony Gilroy and Gareth Edwards. I always mix up between these two directors, to do, of course, Rogue One. Rogue One is, and I've said this many times on this show here, is the best Star Wars to come out in the past, 15 years. And it's right up there, would I say, right up there with the, original trilogy. Like, it was so good. And then, of course, we got Andor season 1, Andor season 2. These are, of course, not only great Star Wars stories, but just a great piece of television. And the thing is that if you guys did catch my best TV shows of the year, Andor was there. And it's hard for it not to be. In fact, it's hard for that show not to be on the greatest lists whenever those are written. Because, yeah, just amazing stuff. And the thing is that, again, taking somebody like Gilroy, who's mostly done non-science fiction franchise stuff, and bringing him in is exactly the kind of model that you need when you want to sort of kickstart or at least rekindle a franchise. Like, that's what happened at Marvel with the Russo brothers, right? So same here. I mean, bring in people from left field, bring in people who sort of have no maybe background in the genre and see what they get up to. We had that with, for example, Taika Waititi, who did sort of such an amazing job on Thor Ragnarok and also contributing to other shows. But then, of course, we got Thor Love and Thunder, which was one of the worst Marvel movies I've seen in a very, very long time. And even he submitted, I would say, a script for a Star Wars film. But I don't think that's going to go anywhere. Right. That's like sort of what she was able to do over the past 14 years. And the thing is that while Andor and the animated series and Rogue One are, I would say, minor victories, the bigger, like sort of the most inexcusable, the unpardonable sin was, of course, making the new trilogy, which is something that is not easy to forget. So the thing is that sort of when she is presented before the gods and sort of they are weighing the scales, I think the scales are going to tip towards the left. And sort of, I think we should be kind of relieved that, she's moving on. And maybe, I don't know if this is her own decision. Maybe she just wanted to retire. I'm not sure, but good. Now, the thing is that who is she being replaced by? So first of all, she's being replaced by, of course, Dave Filoni. Now, Filoni, as I said, if there were ever an heir apparent to George Lucas, it was Filoni, because the thing is that not only is this man like sort of a walking, talking encyclopedia when it comes to all stuff Star Wars. We've seen that sort of when it comes to many, like for example, all of the animated stuff that he's done really shows that this man sort of is cognizant of what he's, sort of entrusted with, right? But then we've also seen him taking it in new directions. Like, for example, well, I think maybe that's a whole sort of thing that I could do separately. But just, I mean, remember in Rebels, how they expand, like, we had Rian Johnson explore the Force in his movie, but then exploring it the way that Filoni did in Rebels. Like, for example, I'm forgetting, that sort of backdoor Force thing that they have. I'm forgetting, what's it called, that Ezra Bridger discovers. I'm forgetting what it's called. But that was really, I like how they were exploring the Force. I like how they were exploring the Force, even if you remember in the Clone Wars when Obi-Wan and Anakin, they go and meet those elders. So, it's good. I like it. But when it came to live action, Ahsoka, even though it felt like, and this is something we all wanted when the way Rebels ended, continuing the story of Ahsoka and Ezra Bridger as she goes on, and of course Thrawn as she goes on to sort of find him. I think that Ahsoka wasn't the sort of same level that sort of Filoni had achieved with Clone Wars or any of the other animated stuff. So maybe this is because again, this was, I think, his first full-time, his first live action thing, like maybe he'd written episodes before, but him directing and all of that stuff. I think this is his first attempt. So, it left me sort of feeling like this guy could have done a better job. The same goes for Boba Fett. We are, of course, getting a season 2 of Ahsoka. Let's see how that is, because I think he's written and directed episodes for it. So at least there, that's why I said that it comes with, at least I'm taking it with not exactly a teaspoon, but whatever is lesser than a teaspoon, smaller than a teaspoon. Maybe a pinch of salt, a dash of it. that's what's giving me pause regarding Filoni. But although he's coming on board as chief creative officer, which I think makes perfect sense. And sort of on the business side, they have Linwen Brennan, who has worked executive vice president and general manager, who has been Lucasfilm executive vice president and general manager at ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, for 16 years. So so she's going to be handling the business side. That's fine. And Filoni is going to be handling all of that stuff. So the thing is that there were certain decisions made under Kennedy, which may or may not see the light of day. Number one, which we know is sort of it's already, I think it's wrapped up filming, and we've seen sort of publicity still for it. That was, of course, Star Wars Starfighter, starring Ryan Gosling, directed by Sean Levy, which I'm not entirely convinced by this director at all. But we did learn recently that Tom Cruise apparently choreographed a lightsaber fight scene. So let's see what that turns out to be. Then we heard that there was going to be yet another new trilogy, this time with our very own Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy and Stephen Knight doing that. And it was apparently going to be the return of Rey. So that was also a questionable decision, because the thing is that, again, Sharmeen is somebody who has, again, yes, won Oscars, but that's for documentaries. And I think her live action stuff, her fictive stuff, extended to I think an episode or two of Miss Marvel, and Teen Bahadur, an animated movie. So again, I wasn't on board with that decision, and I don't like Stephen Knight, even though people love him for Peaky Blinders and House of Guinness and all of that stuff. I don't like the guy, and who cares about Rey? Honestly. So again, that was something that I don't know is still going ahead now that again, she's out, Filoni's in. We also had a couple of others. I think there was, what was these? There was a couple that were mentioned here about all of these projects that were, well, not exactly green lit, but definitely were in development. And the one that again is something that she did and we'll be seeing in May is the Mandalorian movie, The Mandalorian and Grogu. Let's see how that turns out to be. Where is that list? Sorry, I'm trying to find. Oh yeah, this was an interesting one, because the thing is that Ryan Johnson even responded to it. And that was, of course, her comment that the negative, sort of both critical and well, not commercial, but both critical and from fans, reaction to his movie, The Last Jedi, that kind of spooked Ryan Johnson. So I'm forgetting what he said in response to this, but I think that's kind of unfair. I think maybe she was spooked. I think she, as a studio head, was spooked by the reaction, because the thing is that movie did have fans really divided. Because again, people were like, what did they do to Luke? What is this thing what they're doing with the Force? A lot of different stuff there. So I think that, again, trying to play it safe is why she came back to J.J. Abrams for the third and final one of that, trilogy. So, yeah, I welcome the decision. I think it's about time that we do see something new, because 14 years is a really long time to be sort of guiding something. It's almost not as long as Lucas, but I mean, sort of, it's a long time. So, yeah, I mean, I hope, and again, as cliche as this may sound, I hope that it's quality over quantity. This is a lesson that Marvel had to learn the hard way. And I think that, Disney and Lucas have also learned. So, let's just hope we don't get another goddamn trilogy. And no more Skywalkers. No more, please. I'm done with those. I'm done with that family. Let's move on, man. I mean, okay, just one last thing. I'm sorry I've taken up so much of your time. But you know how all of the in-game, like, videos and all of the trailers that they have for all of the Star Wars games, Old Republic and whatnot, why can we not get a movie that looks and feels like that? Why? I've always wondered. I mean, they're so good. The action is great. The stories are great. Everything is so good. But we just never get them. This is something I argued for the longest time about when it came to DC. I mean, why can't they just live up to the standards that DC Animation has put? I mean, sort of forget what's it called, with Batman the Animated Series, Superman, JLA, and all of that stuff. Even their movies. Why can't we get those? If we got those as live action, honestly, man, you'd be aces. Nobody seems to learn.